morning, and thank you very much for coming today. My name is Skip Riddle. I'm the co-lead of the Global Tech Advocates HealthTech Working Group. Our members number about 350. We're part of Global Tech Advocates, which is now numbering about 30,000 around the world. And basically, we're a nonprofit organization helping innovators and businesses and investors and governments to collaborate. Just arriving is the man responsible for much of this, Russ Shaw. Hello, Russ. Welcome.
Everyone, I'm Russ. I'm the founder of Tech London Advocates, Global Tech Advocates. To set the scene, this is London Tech Week. It's the 11th year that we've been doing London Tech Week. Our organization, TLA and GTA, we've been co-founding partners since the very first London Tech Week, way back in 2014. Fast forward to today, the numbers have just come out. The estimate across everything that happened at Olympia during the first 3 days, the AI Summit, which takes place today and yesterday at Tobacco Dock, and all of the fringe events like this one is 45,000, of which about 40% are from overseas. Last year, that number was 30,000. So we've taken a massive step up. Part of that is because we've been able to base the main operations at Olympia, which is a much bigger venue. Last public service announcement, just about Global Tech Advocacy. We're open, inclusive, diverse, and entirely free to join. So please join our network. The London group, which was our first group, is now one of 37 groups around the world. So I am on an airplane a lot these days. We've got groups across the rest of the UK and Europe, Asia Pacific, India, UAE, Africa, and the Americas. And another thank you to Skip. He's been helping me and some folks in Boston on July 1st, launching Tech Boston Advocates, which will be our 38th group in the network. And that group will have a health tech, med tech, biotech focus because of all the wonderful stuff that happens in Boston. So I hope you enjoy this session. There are plenty more fringe events the rest of today and tomorrow. If you need advice on where to go, come see me or come join me. I've got about another 9 or 10 to go. So have a great London Tech Week.
First of all, I would like to thank very much Dominic Kennison, who has not only been our host and our partner here for this event, but also, as I've learned over the last few weeks, is deeply committed to helping health tech innovators, both early stage and later stage, to grow their businesses. Thank you, Dominic. Bob Nolan is also the co-lead of the Global Tech Advocates Health Tech Working Group on a really important issue, and that is how wonderful this country is in terms of supporting health tech, life sciences development here, tech development. In fact, Britain is #1 in Europe for tech development in the health tech sector and in other sectors, but particularly health tech, and that's what we're interested in today. And I think it's a well-kept secret, and what we're going to try to do is to help people understand more about the collaborative opportunities that are here in Britain. I think Dominic would like to say a few words about the work that HSBC Innovation Bank is doing. Thank you.
So I have some information that can maybe help frame that a bit, and I hope it adds to your insight and intelligence. So a little bit about the bank. We are a little bit different as a bank, and I'm keeping an eye on the time, because my background is really not in finance. I'm really a healthcare person. I worked for a very large digital health company about 20 years ago. Before joining the bank in 2023, I was with Bayer Pharmaceuticals for about almost 10 years, based in Germany during that time. So we really have industry expertise and knowledge to really help empower your companies and to help you demystify some of the signposts along the way. And what that actually looks like for our life sciences and healthcare practice is a little bit like this. So as Skip points out, we support companies all the way from very early inception. I'm at one of our early stage clients a little bit earlier, all the way to corporate. My work typically focuses on companies that are Series A and above, all the way to IPO and post-IPO. The bank has different verticals. So I've already mentioned life sciences and healthcare, also enterprise software, climate tech, fintech. We also actually bank venture capital companies. And I think this is in part why people ask so much, well, do you invest? Because they see the connectivity that we have with the VC ecosystem. We do have a global footprint. So I think this is really the power of HSBC. You know, when you have a £3 trillion balance sheet, that enables quite a bit of connectivity. And simply what that looks like for the Innovation Bank, here in the UK, Nordics, Israel, Hong Kong, and of course, the United States. Also, people do ask, well, you know, do you invest? And it's not that we invest, but we do provide venture debt solutions. So we do provide non-dilutive financing to your company. And this is a very fancy chart about how venture debt actually fuels and powers companies, which I can share this with you, but essentially gives you a lot of balance sheet flexibility. And I'll give you a real world story. Earlier this week, I was speaking to a founder and he was super excited about his company. And he says, well, Dom, we have 12 months of runway. We're good. We're turning down VC money right now. And I'm like, why? You know, like if all the VCs I talk to are saying it takes 6 months of due diligence. So you want to start asking people when you have actually 6 months of cash, you know, to invest, it just doesn't make sense. So essentially when you have something like venture debt, you automatically get runway extension. You typically that money is tied into milestones that you already have built into your business, and it's non-dilutive. So it typically adds to your balance sheet. You maybe need to do some different kind of networking and engagement before you think you actually do, especially when you're at that Series A mark or a little bit beyond. So what that actually looks like in data, had to put in at least one pre-COVID year. So went to 2019, looked at companies that were venture backed from seed all the way to late VC. And what I found, and this is purely in health tech, so about £5 billion, these are all UK headquartered companies, 775 companies. And I think some of the data points I pulled out were pretty remarkable. And I was like, well, why is no one talking about this? So what I found, so 2019 to 2023, what you see from a frequency point of view, the vast majority, you know, 88% of seed, 88% of activity is absolutely between seed and Series A. So when you do see a company fundraise, it's typically seed to Series A. There are actually very few UK headquartered companies, and this information actually comes from Dealroom. And you can find this data set, happy to share the link with you. But there are actually few companies that receive funding beyond that Series A, Series B level. And those that do, they actually do, and this donut on the right, receive quite a bit of capital. So, you know, UK funds are absolutely participating at a high clip from seed, early VC, also at Series A, but as soon as you get to Series B, there seems to be some sort of a drop off. I wouldn't necessarily call it a chasm or a cliff, but to go from 57% of UK fund participation to about 41%, you see a lot of big tickets really being made up from US funds, EU funds, and rest of world, which I think is remarkable. And that trend kind of continues as you go beyond Series B to Series D forward. So my last slide, again, I think for founders, this means that you probably have to, what I like to say to founders is plan to the end. You know, like what does success actually look like for you? What does an exit actually look like for you? What does a Series B round actually look like for you? And if you're thinking about a Series B, you probably need to speak to investors that are not just in the UK. For UK investors, if you want your Series A companies to be successful and hit that next fundraise, you probably need to build relationships more proactively with your transatlantic counterparts, which I know Hassan brought at least someone from, from outside of the UK. And then for the ecosystem, I think there are some green shoots. So you do have this, this was announced, I think, late last year, earlier this year, this UK RI initiative for scale-up capital in the UK. So I think there are some initiatives out there that or some people that also recognize this trend, that we have to move a little bit beyond this angel thinking, this, seed funding, the Series A funding, to be a more mature health tech and investor market. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming, everybody. It's really, really great to see you. But what we want to look at today is what can people actually that have an idea, UK as the country of ideas, I want to put that out there, what can they actually do here to get going? What is there? So we've got an amazing representation today from research, from people that have gone from rags to riches as well, and also from Innovate UK, get this wrong, Innovate UK Business Support. That's Austin, you want to get going?
A deep breath then. Yeah, come on. My name is Austin. I'm director of the Self-Care Academic Research Unit at Imperial. I'm research manager for the Global Health. My aim is to democratize access to self-care interventions to prevent delay or change the trajectory of lifestyle diseases.
I'm Jonathan Grambeau. I'm the program manager for the Innovate UK Business Growth Initiative in London. I'm based at UCL, and the goal for us is to help innovative SMEs in London to grow and scale.
My name is Katerina Spranger. I'm the founder and CEO of the company called Oxford Heartbeat, and we develop technology to make surgeries safer for all.
I'm Mohammed. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Patients Know Best, Europe's largest personal health records company.
So what we're going to look at is from idea, from kernel, all the way up to building something big, but from a public funding side. So we're not going to talk too much around VCs. That has its own space, but we're going to talk about what actually is there from a public side, which a lot of people don't know what is there. So just a bit peddling myself here. So I was previously National Director for the NHS Innovation Accelerator, executive on UCL Partners leadership team. I used to work for Novartis, where I headed up the Biome, the innovation hub, as well as for Pfizer. I worked for MasterCard and in fashion retail, as you can clearly tell already. But where did you start? What were the things you benefited from when you got going? Maybe Katarina, you start first.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my background is biomedical engineering and computer science. So I studied in Germany in computer science, and then did a PhD at Oxford in biomedical engineering. And this was actually my research project. And then after finishing the PhD, I just couldn't let go of it, because I really thought that I could already kind of envision how the product would look like, which is actually, by the way, very different from when you do science and sort of a research in the university about something. So there's a huge gap between that and then actually building a product out of it. And then I was lucky enough to get a fellowship from the Royal Academy of Engineering, which is a fantastic organization here in London that has many programs, but one of the programs is to help early stage researchers start companies. So I got that fellowship, and then also the first funding from Innovate UK that allowed me to kind of get going. And I can't be more grateful for the opportunity, because that sort of early years of that kind of freedom with the early funding, with the support, because there was not only funding, but also mentorship and courses at the Royal Academy of Engineering. It was extremely important to have that support. We got more support from Innovate UK, which we're enormously grateful for, and also others, organizations like NIHR, SBRI, and I can talk about others, where now we build a product. We also now almost finished with our clinical trial in the NHS, which is fantastic, across the whole country, independently run by Imperial College Clinical Trials Unit, really truly understanding how the technology changes clinical practice. And we see that. I can talk about that more too. But all of that is to say that we benefited enormously from the public support and all of the ecosystem that is here in London and in the UK. And I'm not sure we would be here without that, or definitely not in this shape and form. So this is just to say that there is an ecosystem that is extremely strong and a lot of support that is available.
Thanks so much, Katarina. And Maud, you can tell us your beginnings and where you are now.
Sure. Dom mentioned a company he worked for in the States before Bayer. I applied for that company and failed to get in. But that was at the time that personal health records, 2006, were really beginning in the USA. And I'd spent the following year writing a book for US hospitals on how do you share medical records with patients. And at the time, Google was launching their platform, Microsoft was launching their platform. And my research really got me excited because my background was as a physician and programmer. I love tech and healthcare, but I'm also a patient with a rare disease. And I kept on finding examples from those hospitals that a person who has their data benefits the whole system. Obviously, they get better care, more agency, but they save money for the healthcare system. So I got obsessed with why isn't everyone doing this faster and a bigger scale? And I spent a year discussing with hospitals, and I found all these reasons why they were struggling. And I thought if there was something that's good to do but hard to do, I'd like to get paid to do it. So how do I scale this up for anyone to go with? The one thing I want to highlight around the UK in this is I could solve every problem the US hospitals were talking about except one, which was basically they were saying, why would I give my customers' data, that's the patient's record, to my competitor, that's the other hospital? So they were up, although they were talking about their patient portals as a customer service tool, it was actually a customer lock-in tool. They were operating in every state as a cartel of small number of providers that did not want the patient to move to another provider, and they're using technology to lock the patient in. And so if you're trying to do things from a patient-centric approach, the USA was the worst place for doing it from a trust perspective. So I came to the UK because I thought every country's regulator will insist on this happening in a patient-centric way, but every regulator is being told by the doctors this can't be done. But once you prove it can be done, it can be scaled up. And the UK allowed a model where if the patient moved to another hospital, the first hospital didn't mind. In fact, it was perfectly happy. So if I could prove it in the UK, I would do it in other countries. That's how I started. And I specifically chose the UK. We're now the largest in doing this. But it started from my research back in 2006.
And did you, at any shape or form in your travels, sort of benefit from public funding, from taxpayer money, so to speak, to get going?
In lots of different ways, including, of course, the opposite, the obvious, which is our biggest customer is the public sector and the National Health Service. But there were grants, there was mentoring, there was research that went with it. But the public funding of universal healthcare in the UK allows business models around prevention and around cooperation, which private sector funded doesn't normally encourage. So if you're thinking long-term for countries, starting in a public health funded system allows those business models to innovate.
Thanks so much. It might be good to get an overview of what's actually there and what people can, all the founders that are here. Actually, I meant to ask, who has benefited from public funding when building their entity? All right, that's good. So what's there? What can people actually tap into?
Yeah, and actually maybe another follow-up question to yours is, who in the room is familiar with Innovate UK? Because we might take a step back in it. Okay, yeah, that's a
let's
good
get
chunk,
this
but
up to
fair enough,
all hands.
Yeah, definitely, let's do it. But coming back to Skip's point as well in the introduction, the UK is the place to be for health innovators. It's 38% of all European clinical trials happen in the UK. It's the leader in Europe, and there's a lot of support as well available for health innovators here. So we'll take a bit of a step back and I'll run through Innovate UK because there's a lot of support here for innovators, particularly for health innovators. Healthy aging and digital health is one of the priorities for Innovate UK. So you'll find a lot of support there. People tend to know Innovate UK as a funding body, which it is. So we give out grants to innovators. We do call for projects. But we don't only do that. We also give out loans, Innovate UK loans to companies that need to bridge cash flow. We have an initiative now called Investor Partnership, where we can match people with private investors as well. We have partnerships with 150 VCs now. So we can bridge the gap here between public funding and private capital. We do contracts as well. So we do work with a number of organizations, including the NHS, and we run things like SBRI, where when there's a challenge, we can help companies apply to challenges, and then companies will get a contract with organizations, including NHS. But we don't only do monetary support, we also do non-financial support, and we are here to help companies to commercialize disruptive innovation. When we talk about health, we have a couple of key partners within the Innovate UK family, and these are the catapults. The UK is home to the Medicines Discovery Catapult and the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult as well. These are really pools of expertise that innovators can tap into for collaborative R&D, or if they're looking for expertise. We have Innovate UK Business Connect, which is a service that is free of charge for innovators that they can use for them to kind of find more information, access expertise, identify events. And then you have Innovate UK Business Growth, and I do run the program for London here. Innovate UK Business Growth is really the advisory arm of Innovate UK, and we have teams of what we call innovation and growth specialists, people that are here to provide one-to-one support to innovators in the country, including Katrina, and we're here to help them understand the ecosystem, because it is a very rich ecosystem. Find the right opportunities, apply for grants, funding for them to apply to identify the right international opportunities. There is a lot of international R&D opportunities for companies here. The UK does bilateral calls with a number of countries in the world, Germany, South Korea. I think I was talking to Eureka Eurostar, Grenfell earlier. So there is a lot, and a lot of these opportunities are open to help innovators, but maybe I'll dive more into the detail later.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. Austin works for Imperial, which is really interesting space. What do you guys do in that space, in the research space, but how do you then link into the things that we just spoke about? But if I come in with a cool solution, how would I engage with you in a research environment?
Great. Thank you, Conrad, for the question. I'll be brief. So self-care is the oldest type of care. We just rediscovered it really. We've taken the focus away from pharmaceuticals and surgery. There's genuine interest now from governments across the world to try to get people to prevent, delay, or change the trajectory of disease. And there are some resistances there with pharmaceutical companies wanting to give us more solutions, but that space is here to stay. And just to summarize, we're developing a WHO resolution on self-care next year, and we hope that will be embedded in national policy and practice. But in terms of evidence generation pathway, absolutely, there's a chicken and egg situation. Innovate UK has really changed the game to make the UK PLC. How do you bring businesses to the UK? We also have a similar infrastructure, the National Institute for Health and Care Research, the NIHR, but the care is now emphasized. And they were established in 2016 to make 2006 to make the UK the best place in the world for health and care research. And that's why we have, again, 38% of the clinical trials, whereas before there was a big dip, and that's why the NIHR was created. So the evidence generation pathway is really interesting, because you need to, if you have a digital pill solution, if you have an app that you want to market, you need to have evidence of effectiveness. So how do you get that? There are two pathways. There's the community dwelling adults, people like us who are here, not patients at the moment. And there's the NHS landscape, whether it's a platform or a technology or an app. So there are different pathways and different ways to articulate that. But what we do as academic partners, we support evaluation, we support the development of high quality protocols that give you the nice evidence standards framework, for example, to meet which criteria and so on. So when you do go back to funders, because you need funding, you can say, well, look, we have this MVP, we have this evidence, we have a trial, these are the data, people like it, we need more money, please. Maybe I'll mention this later, but one of the things that are happening now is the medical device certification thing is really big.
Yep.
A lot of technologies becoming medical devices, and there's a big thing now with Europe, the FDA, and the UK taking its time on purpose to develop the AI regulatory framework. I hope that was helpful as a brief summary of how we support in the evidence generation pathway, which is unique to every product.
Thanks so much, also. Katharina, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just want to add on that some concrete examples. So we are a software as a medical device. So we're purely software product. And what we do is we help with the minimal invasive surgery preparation and execution. There are these new surgeries that are performed through small incision, for example, usually in the groin of the patient, from where devices called stents are deployed to treat conditions like aneurysms, for example, to prevent stroke. So our first product is for the brain, which helps surgeons choose the right implant for every patient, because all patients are different, all implants are also different, and the way they sit in the anatomy. So we do that matching to improve the efficiency of the surgery. So we are a purely software product, but considered to be a medical device from the regulatory point of view. So we need to hit all of the standards of safety and prove that to regulators. But that doesn't end there, because evidence generation in this community is extremely important. Clinicians understand clinical trials. So this is a language they speak. So you might think, oh, it doesn't end there to just build the product and let's say get it certified. You also need to convince the clinical community that it's it's beneficial, because it's difficult to for clinicians to adapt something new, because by nature of it, they're very risk averse. So it's extremely important to understand the evidence generation and to have almost evidence generation strategy, which is when you're starting from the first time. Also in the space of software that is also new, physicians don't even understand it as well. It's very confusing that you have this AI software that is actually a medical device. So what do you need from it? How do you prove the evidence? So it took us also a long time with a lot of support. For example, to design this clinical trial, because we are setting a precedent in our space, in neurology space. No one has done a clinical trial for software as a medical device at all. So we had to kind of make it up, or design, like not make it up, but design it together with the clinical community, with the, for example, organizations that are part of NIHR, but our trial is supported by NIHR. For example, there is a research design service that sort of helps innovators design clinical trials and give feedback and what is the good protocol, what is not. It's all extremely not straightforward. So, if you have something in mind, it's very important to get feedback, because otherwise you're gonna run a trial with the outcomes, potentially with data points that actually are not going to be helpful for you afterwards at all. For example, for NICE approval, or even to convince the clinical community that your technology should be adopted.
Much. Just curious, Austin, from what you just listened to, that sort of early stage, and you just heard Katharina praising Imperial, but what are the breaking points in the early stages?
I'm unsure if the culture is changing, so I want to just summarize by saying that what I think the problem is, we have great public infrastructure, research infrastructure, academic institutions, and we're inventing a new vocabulary. What needs to change is the culture, and as you know, that's the thing that changes the slowest. But there is a needle moving here, I think. The UK strategically wants to be highly competitive in the knowledge economy, which we are. And the question is, how do we actually maintain our position as one of the global health vanguards internationally? And I think we need people to think like this, and we need case studies whereby we could say we trailblazed a study or an evaluation with academic partners in a way that we want to hold up and say, see what we've done. Yeah. There's something here that you could maybe replicate.
Yeah, I just wanted to react to the brain drain point, because it's true that you do have health companies that start here and then maybe post Series A. Some of them will go to the US. And that probably feeds into the point that Dom was showing in his presentation. You do have companies that tend to raise Series A here and then go abroad for Series B. And I think that it's really important to try to leverage all of the support available in this country to retain those companies here. And a couple of things that we're doing at Innovate UK, one is trying to facilitate the companies to raise investment in this country. And this is what I was mentioning before with the investor partnership initiative that we launched. So companies can apply, call for proposal, and if they're successful, they get some of the funding from Innovate UK and the match funding directly from one of the investor partner to facilitate the raise, because it's been increasingly difficult for companies to raise money post-COVID. And then the other one is the Scale Up initiative, which I think Dom touched upon. It's really important to be there to support these innovators on their journey, right? Not to have them go to the US after a Series A.
And there's also Horizon.
And there is also Horizon as well, yeah. So the UK is an associated country under Horizon. So there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunities for companies to apply to Horizon funding. things like the EIC, European Innovation Council, or there is a specific cluster under Horizon Europe called Health, and there's a lot of opportunities for organizations in Europe, universities, SMEs, corporates, to get together to create consortia to apply to these. There's a lot of funding under Horizon Europe.
One thing I find it gets missed out because we're talking about the universities and the approvals and so on. The UK consumer is a really big advantage asset in the to the UK tech industry. So the UK has the second highest percentage of retail that gets done online, second only to China. And if you go from Northampton and draw a circle 200 miles around it, there's 50 million people living there. There's no concentration of in the West of high-income people living like that. You get lots in Asia, but nothing in the West. So a lot of offline to online business models get pioneered in the UK with that consumer. And the reason I mention it is, my mentor at university used to say to me, the NHS is unprepared for success. It doesn't know what to do with it. So you have something like the NHS app, which brings on all these consumers, and it doesn't realize that the UK consumer is amazing in adopting things. So we release 20 million test results to patients every month. And my job really is to free up all that data, because once it's in the hand of the UK patient, the UK consumer, lots of innovations start coming through. And as a laboratory for environments where you can bypass all the many hoops that you're having to jump through, if you put it in the hands of the patient, they can do things with it. There's a lot you can accelerate here compared to other Western economies.
I just want to make a quick point, two breaths about what you said in terms of the NHS landscape. I want to reflect on what Germany's done with the DIGA. So they have a system whereby if an app or technology has met a good standard of effectiveness, the family physicians can then prescribe the app. They've got a drop-down menu and they can prescribe you the app with a code, and somebody else pays for it. And that just wants me to talk about the reimbursement model. So at the moment, we are reimbursing hospitals and NHS on activity, which has been the case for a long time. But there has been there's a case being made, we should reimburse them on outcomes. So, if we can have technology to improve outcomes, the better you can keep your patients healthy, the more money we'll give you. So everybody, it's a win-win situation, which means that as a commissioner of health and well-being, you could actually take some calculated risks and say, I believe, given the evidence, that this technology and this modality is going to help people stay out of the gate, inflate the pre-primary care bubble where people can stay out in the community because they're healthier. And that is very nice. And I think that's what would need to happen eventually in the UK.
We're a business that's looking at equipping digital therapeutics with medical, behavioral, and nutritional data. For one reason alone, we see that as being the biggest, without that data, there's the biggest block to innovation exploding in digital therapeutics. It's a question for Jonathan. If we enable digital therapeutics with that data, they then are able to prove that their app works on a clinical, a biological, and a behavioral basis. Does Innovate UK actually help them do the trials? Because that's their biggest block. I think the idea of it being, £75,000 to do any sort of evidence-based research, it's a much bigger than that. That's a fraction of doing proper clinical trials. So when I talk to developers and innovators, they say, yeah, we've got this great idea. You, health data services, could give them the data. But the pathway to reimbursement is so tortuous that they give up and they don't start. And what we have to do is to create that environment where that can happen. And clinical trials is a big one. How can you guys help that?
I think if I, and we got one question over here, there's one piece, you made the point, it's health, right? So we've got patient safety, patient data, and this is like me, boring compliance person, but some of that stuff is important. If you think about AI in healthcare, we think about bias in AI, we think about inequity of access to AI augmented services. We are dealing with patients, with all of your data, right? So, and I think there's a slight difference to the financial side. I get it, but we try to speed up things. But sometimes you're going to have some barriers in place and some stop gaps to also make sure that people that are not serious enough drop out. It is by design to some degree, that whole approach. Austin, yes,
Very
do you want to swap the microphone?
Brief point to say that because of the governance and ethics around data, Oxford and others have developed the artificial human data. So they've taken real patient data, and they've just taught AI to produce data that's the same but not. So they created an artificial population, and that population, the data is as though these people exist, although it doesn't. But it's congruent data, so it makes sense, right? You can't be diabetic and have HbA1c normal, and so on and so forth. So that's artificial human data, could be mined. Not a lot of people know about this, but I think that's why strategically in the UK, there are these big projects that will help innovators. Now, you also want to be best in class or first in class or both. So you need to check what has been done in that space and see how can you change the game. Because oftentimes people get confused between intellectual property, copyright, and modality. You'll find that a lot of the solutions we have now are simply a combination of things that already exist. You've just put them in a way that makes sense. That's the copyright, and that's you can register it, but actually it's nothing new. It's just smart, what you've done. So I would encourage you to look at that aspect as well. Thank you.
Erica Yang, CEO, Chiltern Computing, but we are spinning our company called Caring OS, operating system for care, addressing the self-care issues. But anyway, my specific question is about time frame. How long did a company sort of go through this funding journey to the point that they actually get some proper revenue?
It really depends on what you're building, right? So if you're building a software as a medical device, that of course, not only do you need to develop the technology, but also you need time to regulate it. And maybe if it's something very, very clinical, like what we do for surgical space, you also need then a clinical trial or even maybe multiple clinical trials and different studies to actually show that it's safe and it makes a difference and it improves patient outcomes.
And also, I think answering the question why global health innovators choose Britain, it is a really good place to get going with an idea once you know the entry points. And if you work with the likes of Austin, for example, in the early research space, and if you find a platform, it's universities, it's Cambridge, Oxford, Imperial, UCL, if you find these people, and that's the point, it's a people business innovation, and it's a team sport. You actually get going, and you can get going in the UK. So with that, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Skip as well. I want to thank the Global Tech Advocates for providing this platform today as well, and also for Dom, who's just getting himself a coffee, which I'm going to have in a second. And everybody else I forgot now to thank for this amazing morning. So enjoy yourself. Have a nice time networking until we get thrown out. Thank you so much.
Conrad.